Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Marcelo Bernal from the School of Psychology, Universidad de Cuenca. In today's presentation, I'd like to explain to you how we have been doing the Earling syndrome research in Cuenca, Ecuador. What instrument we have been using for the evaluation of this syndrome. The title of the presentation is The Structural Validity of an Instrument for the Evaluation of Earling Syndrome. This is the research team that we have been working on this particular topic. I would like also to go over these different points. We will be talking about a brief introduction, the definition of Earling syndrome, some international Earling syndrome studies in Ecuador, and as a second part, we will discuss how is the Earling syndrome screened and the Earling Reading Perceptual Scale, the IRPS, the IRPS Ecuadorian version, and finally, the new IRPS. To begin with, I would like to state that reading for us is the foundation for all the learnings. And according to Galia in 2018, she mentions that learning relies on our senses. Obviously, every stimuli that we receive is processed and then is perceived by the brain. The information that we receive through our senses is transmitted to the brain, which processes the information it receives. Different information from our senses, the sight, the smell, the touch, goes to the brain, and it's also processed within the brain. Now, our concern is about the visual stimuli. An effective visual processing can lead the person to achieve in one's studies and feel confident in one's learning abilities. How the brain interprets or effectively interprets these information can help us to process this information, and this is at the heart of the learning process. Difficulties, if we have difficulties with the visual processing, so we will have doubts in our abilities, we will struggle in the learning process and can easily give up and quit our studies. Now, as I mentioned before, our concern is about the visual perceptual processing difficulties. And Meyer in 2013, she mentions that it is a hindered ability to make sense of information taken in through the eyes. The Earling syndrome, it is not a problem with the eyes. It is a problem on how the brain processes visual information. Earling, 1983. Now, let's continue talking about the Earling syndrome. What is the Earling syndrome? The very simple definition of Earling syndrome that Earling says is that it is a visual perceptual difficulty that can affect individuals of all ages. Symptoms can include word movement or distortion, headaches, migraines, fatigue, and poor depth perception. Visual stress can also exacerbate reading and writing difficulties. Here we can observe the different percentages of how the Earling syndrome affects in the general population. As you can see, so we have a percentage of 12 and 14%. In individuals with learning differences, it is the 46%. Individuals with ADD or HD or challenging behaviors, so we have the percentage of the 31%. 50% of the individuals who have dyslexia present this syndrome, and the 33% of individuals on the autistic spectrum. Earling syndrome also can be found in individuals who suffer traumatic head injuries and stroke victims, other medical conditions such as epilepsy, asthma, and migraine. Here we present a brief, analysis or just some of the symptoms that you can observe in a patient or a person who suffers syndrome Irlen. You can see the signs include rubbing eyes when reading, excessive blinking, tiring, inability to read for long, or poor concentration. Loses place when they're reading, they dislike also reading. Within the symptoms, you can see that they have headaches when reading, movement, blurring of the page, blurring of the print too. Here in this slide, you can see some of the symptoms that the people who suffer Irlen syndrome observe or experience. So we have the swirling. You can also see that when students or people who are participating in studies of the Irlen syndrome, they observe this river effect. To continue with our presentation, now we have some examples of some international studies on Irlen syndrome. So there is one done in the United States by Mel Belmont, the other one done by Robinson in Australia, and the one that we have been doing in Ecuador. So you see there is a slight difference between the percentages of affecting of this Irlen syndrome in the populations of our countries. The research that we have done in Ecuador, so we have 3 projects that we have used the IRPS and also the presence of the Irlen screening. The first one was a study of incidence in Cuenca, Ecuador, the use of color and reading fluency, and the other one, the last one, has been the neuropsychological evaluation and intervention for the reading skills improvement in children with Irlen syndrome. How we can tackle this problem? So according to several authors and studies that we have done around the world, color can help us alleviate these symptoms. So you can see in the picture of the left, the Irlen syndrome without lenses, the activation of the brain, and the Irlen syndrome with lenses, how the stimuli or the reaction of the brain is. So that's quite different. How is the Irlen syndrome assessed? This is the section that we will concentrate to discuss about how the Irlen syndrome is evaluated. So we need to count with the experience of an Irlen screamer and also with the Irlen diagnostician. We also use the Irlen reading perceptual scale. The Irlen reading perceptual scale is divided in 4 sections. So the section number 1 records data from a list of 17 questions on visual distortions and physical discomfort while reading. The section number 2 records data from tasks executed by the participants on several activities like Cube A, Cube B, pumpkins, etc., etc. Section number 3 records the subject's reactions on the improvement, and section number 4 gives information about distortion pages. Now it's your turn, Paul.
Good day, everyone. So in order to make good research, our concern has been to obtain a valid and reliable instrument. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about this regarding the construct validity of this instrument we are presenting, and specifically the structural validity of it. I have to say that in this research, we have used several samples to study the internal structure of this instrument. Why several samples? Well, first because we wanted to avoid the overfitting problems that we obtain if we work with the same sample over and over again. And second, to have more representativeness of these Ecuadorian children. Regarding this instrument, we have two versions. First of all, we have the original version of this instrument that includes 34 questions and two first-order factors. Those are the visual distortions and physical discomfort. The Likert scale that we use in this instrument is always, sometimes, never, and don't know. Also, there is a 5 first-order factor model suggested by Vilches and Beltran in 2018 that includes 5 dimensions: the physical discomfort, the stress environments, problem reading behaviors, fatigue, and reading compensation. The Likert scale used in this instrument is never, seldom, sometimes, many times, and always. There you can see the results of this 5 first-order factor I just mentioned and how the items behave. And also you have a picture of the section 1 of this instrument that we are assessing in this presentation. So what we have found is that the 5 first order factor model that was found a couple of years ago is not the best model we can find, but rather the original version gives us these results that you are now reading in your screens. We assessed the goodness of fit using several indexes, including the chi-square, the degrees of freedom, the p-value, the comparative fit index, the Tucker-Lewis index, the standardized root mean square, and the root mean square error of approximation. We have compared these results that we obtained with the cutoff values that the literature on psychometrics suggests. In this case, all of these values are ideal, that reveals an excellent goodness of fit. And we also assessed the internal consistency of the 2 dimensions of the original version. And as you can see there, we obtained a really high Cronbach's alpha, but also we reported McDonald's omega and hierarchical omega, which gave us really excellent results. This allows us to conclude that we have really good structural validity and really good internal consistency. This is the final structure of the model that we found. As you can see, all the items have really high factor loadings, which means that the instrument is apparently doing its job of measuring what it intends to measure. So as a summary of results, we have excellent goodness of fit, meaning we have good structural validity, we have very good internal consistency, and we have high factor loadings for each one of the items we are including in this evaluation. And thank you very much for your attention.